Welcome, curious minds, to The Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a story that, well, it perfectly blends high-stakes international diplomacy with some truly bizarre, almost unbelievable headlines.
Definitely a strange mix.
We're talking about the recent 2025 Russia-United States summit in Alaska. What really happened behind the scenes when, two of the world's most talked about leaders met.
Yeah.
And what does it tell us about the world we live in?
Mm.
Our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack the official story of that summit, explore the really surprising and frankly peculiar stories that popped up around it, and then zoom out a bit
Right.
to understand how we navigate and make sense of information in a world that's just buzzing with both, verifiable facts and some really wild claims. Think of this as your shortcut to being well-informed, maybe with some surprising nuggets along the way.
That's a great way to put it. Our objective here is to give you a really thorough understanding of the summit's context, the key events, the official outcomes. But like you said, we won't stop at the headlines. We'll also dig into those curious anecdotes because sometimes those little details, they can reveal far more than the official statements.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we want to look at the underlying dynamics of how information spreads, how it shapes what we believe, especially now when we're just constantly flooded with information.
Okay, let's unpack this then.
Yeah.
The 2025 Russia-United States Summit, people call it Alaska 2025 or the Trump-Putin Summit, it happened on August 15, 2025 at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage.
Right, in Alaska.
And the main driver, the big reason for this meeting, the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian War. You might remember the U.S. president had made a pretty bold promise to end it on his very first day in office.
Which is a huge promise, almost impossible really on day one.
Absolutely. What kind of context should we keep in mind when we look at this summit through that lens?
You're absolutely right. That promise sets a huge stage. And to give that some critical context, this war itself has been the deadliest in Europe since World War II, so the stakes couldn't be higher. What's crucial to understand is that direct U.S.-Russia talks actually started much earlier, back in February 2025. It was initiated by a surprise phone call between the two leaders.
Oh.
And that phone call then sort of paved the way for more formal groundwork. You had Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov meeting in Saudi Arabia, kind of preparing for this big moment.
Speaking of groundwork, it's fascinating how much of the pre-summit communications seemed to happen not just through, official channels, but also via regular phone calls and even Truth Social posts from the U.S. president.
Yeah, that was noticeable.
And one anecdote really sticks out. The U.S. president telling reporters about a wonderful conversation he had with his Russian counterpart on July 23rd.
Right, I remember that.
Only for another Ukrainian city to be hit shortly after. That's quite a disconnect, isn't it, between the diplomatic talk and the grim reality on the ground.
It's a massive disconnect.
Yeah.
And it brings us right to one of the most, perplexing parts of this pre-summit period, those constantly shifting deadlines for ending the war.
Yes.
Initially, there was that 50-day ultimatum, remember? Backed by threats of 100% tariffs on anyone buying Russian oil.
Huge threats.
Then that got incredibly shortened to a tight 10 or 12-day deadline. But when that final deadline arrived, August 8th, instead of imposing those promised sanctions,
nothing happened.
Well, the U.S. president simply announced he would host the Russian president in Alaska. This pivot, from strong threats to an actual invitation, it immediately signaled a pretty significant shift in approach.
And the wider geopolitical situation leading up to this summit was incredibly tense, to say the least.
Understatement, yeah.
On the ground in Ukraine, Russia controlled, 88% of Donbass, 74% of Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblasts, and was making small gains in the Pokrovsk offensive.
Still pushing forward.
Beyond that, nuclear tensions were dangerously high. We heard former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev warn of a dead-hand threat.
Which is frankly terrifying, referencing that old Soviet automatic launch system.
It's chilling. Designed to trigger a retaliatory strike, even if the leadership is gone. It really underscored the stakes. The U.S. responded by announcing the movement of nuclear submarines, and Russia then pulled out of the 1987 Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. What does all this tell us about the climate these leaders were meeting in?
It tells us they were meeting in a uniquely volatile environment. I mean, this summit was truly exceptional for several reasons. It was the first time the Russian president had been invited to a Western country since he ordered the full-scale invasion back in 2022.
Big deal.
Huge. It was also the first time a Russian presidential visit to the U.S. happened on U.S. military property. That's highly unusual for such a high-profile guest.
Interesting point.
And of course, it was the first meeting between these two specific leaders, the sitting president since way back in 2019. Each of these things just highlighted the gravity and the sensitive nature of the talks.
Okay, so the stage is set for August 15th.
Yeah.
And the arrival itself, wow, I mean, what a spectacle. An L-shaped red carpet rolled out at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson,
Very.
flanked by 4 F-22 Raptor fighter jets, leading to a platform with Alaska 2025 written on it. The U.S. president lands first, then the Russian president. They shake hands, pose on the platform.
Standard procedure, but...
But then, in this really striking visual, they get into the U.S. presidential state car together. The Russian president actually ditched his own planned Urus limo.
That caught everyone's eye.
And while they stood there, F-22s or F-35s and even B-2 bombers flew overhead. That alone seems like a powerful, maybe even unsettling visual statement, wouldn't you say?
It absolutely is. The imagery, them sharing that car, the joint appearance with the jets overhead, these are powerful, calculated symbols.
Calculated, yeah.
In diplomacy, optics like that are never accidental. They're designed to convey a message, maybe unity, maybe just a united front to the world, despite all the underlying tensions.
Right.
The meeting itself was structured as a 3-on-3 discussion, kind of designed for a more intimate, focused exchange rather than a huge delegation.
Who was involved?
For the U.S. side, you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff joining the president. The Russian president had his foreign policy aide Yuri Ushakov and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Okay.
The talks began around 11:32 a.m. and wrapped up by 2:1 p.m. So a relatively brief time frame for such critical negotiations, actually.
And during the meeting, the U.S. president gave a gift, right? A ceremonial American bald eagle desk statue.
Yes, a symbolic gift.
But maybe more telling than the gift was the fact that a planned working lunch between the two leaders was canceled.
Ah.
In the world of high-stakes diplomacy, a canceled meal often speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the warmth, or maybe the lack of it, in private talks. Hints maybe at a lack of breakthroughs or even a strained atmosphere.
That's a really insightful point about the canceled lunch. Yeah. It could suggest very little common ground was found, or perhaps they hit an immediate impasse that made more conversation sort of pointless. And while we just mentioned the core negotiating teams, it's important to realize the full breadth of who was there from both sides.
Right, there were bigger delegations present overall.
Oh, yeah. Beyond those primary negotiators, both the U.S. and Russian delegations were packed with high-level officials, secretaries of state, defense, treasury heads, even intelligence chiefs for both countries.
So a lot of horsepower in the room.
Oh, exactly. This wasn't just two leaders chatting. It was a comprehensive engagement involving key players across their governments. It signals the wide range of topics that could have been on the table.
Okay, so after the meeting, the press briefing was, well, remarkably brief. That itself raised some eyebrows.
It did. Very short.
The Russian president started. He acknowledged the strained relations, but described the talks as having been held in a respectful, constructive, and mutually respectful atmosphere. Pretty standard diplomatic language.
Very standard, yes.
Then the U.S. president followed, immediately stating he had always had a fantastic relationship with his counterpart, which he claimed was impeded by the Russia hoax. Bringing that up there. That's a significant claim to make right then and there, isn't it? What's the immediate takeaway from those statements?
It absolutely is significant. The immediate outcome, though, was the most striking thing. Basically, no substantial change in the status quo was announced. Nothing concrete.
No details now.
Neither leader took questions from the press, which is highly unusual for a summit like this. It suggests they either didn't want to elaborate or, frankly, had little positive to report.
And crucially.
And, as you hinted, for the U.S. president not to mention Ukraine or a ceasefire even once during his remarks after campaigning so hard on ending the war, well, that was a glaring omission.
Definitely noticed. Post-summit, the analysis came fast and was pretty pointed. It was widely reported that the U.S. president's minimum expectation, which was a temporary ceasefire, was not achieved.
Yeah.
He apparently said, "We didn't get there."
Yeah, that quote circulated widely.
The Guardian went so far as to call the summit a gift for Putin, suggesting he regained his stature on the world stage. That's a pretty strong take. Did that idea resonate widely, or were there other big interpretations?
That was definitely a significant take, yes. But The Economist, for example, offered a different, though equally critical perspective.
Right.
Their focus was less on the gift to Putin and more on what they called the U.S. president's dramatic pivot.
The pivot from threats to the invitation.
Exactly. He'd previously threatened crippling sanctions if the summit didn't produce a ceasefire. Instead, he seemed to abruptly side with the Russian president on seeking a comprehensive peace, effectively accepting Russian demands for a full end to the war. This was seen as a major shift in U.S. policy, moving from pressuring Russia to sort of accommodating its core demands.
And what were those Russian demands, the ones that apparently led to this pivot? Reuters reported the Russian offer included several key things, territorially.
Right, this is important.
It called for Ukrainian withdrawal from Donetsk Oblast, that's about 6,600 square kilometers, and freezing the front lines in Kherson and Zaporizhia oblasts. In return, Russia would pull back from Kharkiv and Sumy oblasts, a much smaller area, only about 400 square kilometers.
So a significant territorial imbalance there in the proposal.
Seems like it.
And beyond the land swaps, the offer also laid out major diplomatic shifts. It suggested barring Ukraine from joining NATO, which has been a core Russian demand for years.
A non-starter for Ukraine, usually.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
And recognition of Russia's annexation of Crimea, though it was apparently unclear if this recognition was also required from European countries.
Ambiguity there.
Right. It also proposed lifting some sanctions against Russia, again, with fuzziness around whether Europe had to participate. And finally, there were proposals about the official status of the Russian language in parts or all of Ukraine and rights for the Russian Orthodox Church to operate freely. So very comprehensive demands, touching on many of the conflict's root issues from Russia's point of view.
So that's the official record. A summit filled with high stakes, tense buildup, and ultimately pretty unclear outcome.
Murky results, yeah.
But as anyone who follows international events knows, the official narrative is rarely the whole story. What really grabbed the world's attention and maybe revealed more about the human or maybe inhuman side of these power players were the utterly bizarre stories bubbling just beneath the surface.
Here we go.
And leading that charge, maybe predictably, were the rumors. The rumors that the Russian president's security detail carried a poop suitcase to the Alaska summit.
It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But yes, this highly unusual measure was apparently intended to stop foreign powers from getting sensitive information about the leader's health, his diet, maybe medications from his, well, fecal waste.
Wow. Just wow.
This practice is reportedly something that's been going on for years. Some sources say since 1999, others say at least since 2017. It's a pretty striking example of the extreme lengths intelligence agencies might go to for even seemingly mundane info about a leader.
So, the reports described quite the operation. Members of Russia's Federal Protection Service, the FPS, they supposedly collect the waste in special bags.
Right.
And then transport it back to Russia in secure briefcases. There were even mentions of using portable toilets on foreign trips to make this easier. It just makes you wonder, if this is true, what other lengths do world leaders go to?
It definitely raises questions about the level of paranoia, maybe justifiable paranoia, around intelligence gathering on leaders' health, and whether measures like this are common for other leaders, even if we don't hear about them.
Yeah.
Interestingly, some online chatter suggested former U.S. President George W. Bush might have done something similar. It just highlights how deeply intelligence agencies value even the most intimate personal details for potential leverage or insight.
Okay, and if you thought that was strange, let's pivot from security protocols to ceremonial gifts. We just heard about the American bald eagle desk statue given at the summit.
Seemed pretty standard.
Right. But it turns out diplomatic gifts have a long and sometimes deeply weird history, putting that eagle statue into some truly wild company.
Oh, absolutely. History gives us some truly unusual examples that make the eagle desk statue seem perfectly normal by comparison.
Like what?
Well, think of the metal wine cooler shaped like a giant grasshopper. That was from French President Pompidou to Queen Elizabeth II in 1972.
A giant grasshopper wine cooler.
Or how about 300 pounds of raw lamb presented by the President of Argentina to George W. Bush in 2003? Imagine getting that through customs.
Oh my gosh. My personal favorite has to be the straw penis sheath given to Prince Philip by the Castum people of Tana, where he's apparently revered as a deity.
That one's legendary.
And imagine this. The future Queen Elizabeth got 500 cases of tinned pineapple from Australia in 1947 as a wedding present.
Better than raw lamb, I suppose.
Still, maybe beats the 2 tins of tuna the Earl and Countess of Wessex reportedly received in Canada once.
Ouch. Then there's the story of the camel. From Mali's government to Francois Hollande in 2013. It was reportedly cooked by the family left to care for it,
Oh, yeah.
and then promptly replaced with a bigger and better-looking camel, and maybe the most unexpected. Horse sperm, offered to Queen Elizabeth in 2011 by a thoroughbred owner.
Okay, you win. Horse sperm.
It just goes to show you diplomatic gifts are rarely boring. They often reveal the quirks of international relations in the most unexpected ways.
These quirky anecdotes are definitely memorable, but they also bring us to an equally significant, though much lighter, aspect of how the summit was received. The explosion of satirical AI-generated videos.
Ah, the deepfakes. They were everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere, blurring the lines between reality and parody in new and frankly fascinating ways.
These deepfake videos injected this unique mix of humor and irony into the very serious topic of the summit. They became a commentary in themselves. For instance, there was one, a video game fight between the two leaders on the tarmac, or scenes of them frolicking in the snow, dancing with, or even running from a polar bear.
A polar bear.
Yep, while Ukrainian and European leaders looked on annoyed through binoculars, almost like a cynical Punch and Judy show playing out.
And other videos showed them fist bumping in a limo, right? Or laughing together conspiratorially in a private meeting while European leaders peeped through the glass, looking annoyed.
Exactly. There was even a really cynical narrative involving the North Korean leader and the U.S. First Lady setting some kind of trap for the U.S. president. The Russian president and his foreign minister were shown parachuting out of a burning plane. It was truly a wild mix.
Just pure online chaos.
And one particularly striking one showed the Indian prime minister standing by as the two leaders shook hands, holding a placard with his famous quote, "This is not an era of war." What's really fascinating here is how these deepfakes don't just provide humor. They also reflect public sentiment, skepticism, and they demonstrate how easily humor, pointed commentary, and sometimes outright misinformation can be created and shared, further blurring those lines of reality.
This brings us to a crucial point. Connecting these unusual summit stories like the alleged poop suitcase and these AI deepfakes to the broader phenomenon of conspiracy theories.
Right, a natural link.
Let's focus on the long-standing Putin body double theory, which, incidentally, was even mentioned by some sources in the context of the Alaska summit itself. It's a classic example of how strange details can fuel even stranger narratives.
The Putin body double theory, yeah, it's been around for years. It's based on alleged inconsistencies in his appearance. People point to his chin, his earlobes, wrinkles changing.
Subtle things.
Subtle things, yeah. These claims really ramped up since 2022, especially with COVID-19 precautions changing his public appearances. There's even a popular meme that shows 6 alleged doubles, each with a nickname like Babbler, Udmurt, Banquet, Kuchma, Bruise, and Diplomat, supposedly performing different duties. It's a really widespread, persistent belief for some.
And Ukrainian officials have been particularly vocal about these claims, haven't they?
They have.
The Ukrainian military intelligence chief, Kirilo Budanov, he focused on ear uniqueness. Said a person's ear image is unique, can't be repeated. Major General Vadim Skibitsky also weighed in, citing the alleged use of doubles to hide the Russian president's deteriorating health.
Right, connecting it to health concerns.
And photos circulated online claiming to show differences in height, maybe the use of high heels, variations in chins during different public appearances. Moscow State University, Mariupol, Dagestan, China. It sounds like quite a case they're trying to build, visually at least.
Yet, on the other side, Russian authorities have consistently, flatly denied these allegations. They maintain a very unified front.
What do they say?
Well, the Russian president himself denied using doubles back in 2001 and again in 2015. He did admit once that he was offered the option during difficult times of the fight against terrorism in the early 2000s, but he claimed he refused. And his spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, repeatedly refutes the claims. He calls them information hoaxes and states very firmly, "We have only one Putin." It's a narrative they've actively tried to control.
But what about more analytical perspectives on this? It's not just officials arguing back and forth.
No, there's been analysis. Medusa, which is a Russian-Latvian independent media outlet, they actually used Amazon Recognition. That's a neural network for face recognition.
Okay.
And they found a 99.6% to 99.9% similarity in photos of the alleged doubles, which directly contradicts the conspiracy theory.
So technology says no.
Well, it gets more complicated. In June 2023, Japanese researchers using both facial recognition and voice identification concluded there was at least one body double.
Really? What was their evidence?
They cited differences in facial features comparing appearances, like at the Crimean Bridge versus in Mariupol, and even differences they detected in his voice from a speech at the Eurasian Economic Forum. So now you have conflicting scientific-style evidence, which only makes the theory harder to completely debunk.
Fascinating. Adds fuel to the fire.
And to add another layer of complexity, it's worth remembering that there are actual professional lookalikes of the Russian president out there.
Oh, really? Like actors?
Yeah, people like Anatoly Gorbanov, Vasily Korokodin, Vladimir Belousov, Dmitry Grakyov, even a Polish guy, Sułomir Sobala, they participate in events, for money. Their very existence adds another dimension to how people perceive this, blurring the lines even further between what's real, what's maybe fake, and what's just a paid performance.
This all leads us into a broader and really crucial discussion about the nature of disinformation itself. It feels especially relevant when official summits get tangled up with bizarre rumors and deepfakes.
Absolutely essential to talk about.
At its core, disinformation is basically false information that is deliberately intended to mislead. Right. The goal is for it to spread virally and often unwittingly once it's out there, like a cleverly designed virus infecting the information ecosystem.
Exactly. And this raises the important question. Why does this matter so much? Well, the threat of disinformation is significant because it affects all democracies. It damages confidence in key institutions. It erodes trust and cooperation between citizens.
Undermines everything.
It undermines a shared understanding of basic facts. And at its worst, disinformation can lead to real-world harm, inciting hate, violence, even direct attacks on a nation's sovereignty.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? How can you spot disinformation in your daily life, scrolling through feeds or reading news?
Yeah, practical tips are key.
Here are some things you can look out for. First, pay attention to your emotions. Content designed to provoke a really strong emotional response, especially anger or fear. That's often a red flag.
Good point. Emotion is a trigger.
Also, be wary of information that exaggerates or twists valid facts or uses manipulated photos or images completely out of context.
Context is everything with images.
Always keep an eye out for bold or extreme statements on controversial issues or content that seems to be shared really widely on platforms known for spreading disinformation. And of course, watch for clickbait.
Those headlines.
Those sensational, misleading headlines designed just to get you to click. Or claims that simply seem too good or too outrageous to be true. If it sounds unbelievable, it probably is. Pause and think.
And if you want to go a step further, to actually try and confirm if something is disinformation, there are several really powerful ways. First, just make it a habit to pause.
Just stop before sharing.
Exactly. Take a moment to consider the accuracy before you jump to conclusions or hit share. Always check for credible authors and sources who is actually behind the situation. Do they have a good reputation? Compare the information from multiple reputable news outlets. If only one obscure website is reporting something extraordinary, be very skeptical.
Good advice.
You can use fact-checking tools like AFP Fact Check or Snopes. See if the story's already been debunked. Pay attention to design elements, too. Unprofessional logos, weird colors, odd spacing on a website can be clues something isn't quite right.
Visual cues.
Yep. Use search engines with keywords like hoax, scam, or fake alongside the topic you're checking. A reverse image search is incredibly useful for photos. It can show you if an image has been altered or maybe copied from a totally different context.
I use that one a lot.
It's great. And finally, validate domain names. Check for typos or names trying to mimic official organizations. Be vigilant about spotting fake social media accounts, too. Look at profile photos. Check for recycled images, typos, profiles that are brand new or really vague, and suspicious engagement patterns like random comments, only emojis, or a really low follower count compared to their engagement.
It's also fascinating to think about the different reasons why people share false political information, even if they know it might not be true.
The motivations are complex.
Some people are driven by what researchers call pro-social activism. They genuinely want to educate, inform, or mobilize others for social change, or encourage critical thinking or political accountability.
So, good intentions, potentially flawed execution.
Right. Others act out of a sense of awareness, wanting to bring transparency, make people aware of information, though this can sometimes be tinged with suspicion, maybe leaning towards conspiracist thinking. Then there are those who genuinely believe they are fighting false information, even if they accidentally spread it further while trying to debunk it.
The Streisand effect, almost?
Sort of. On the more cynical side, some share false info simply to attack or manipulate others, with a disregard for truth or welfare, often for self-enhancement or just to cause harm.
Darker side.
We also see political self-expression, people just wanting to share their views, participate in debate, and, maybe surprisingly, for plain old entertainment. People wanting to entertain themselves or others, be funny, or just alleviate boredom. There's a whole mix of reasons.
It really is. And this brings up an important point about individual differences. While the research on personality and demographic has given kind of conflicting results,
It's not clear-cut.
not totally, but there's some interesting work suggesting a potential role for something called positive schizotypy.
What's that?
It refers to a set of personality traits, including things like unusual perceptual experiences, maybe suspiciousness, or a tendency to believe in the paranormal. Some research suggests this might be linked to a person's likelihood to share false information.
Interesting.
It's a complex landscape, for sure, and it underlines that debunking strategies, while absolutely crucial, might not work for everyone. Especially not for those whose intent in sharing is malicious or may be driven by deeper psychological factors.
So we've taken quite a journey today, from the serious realities of the 2025 Russia-United States Summit, its high stakes, its mixed outcomes, all the way to the deeply strange, like the alleged poop suitcase,
Still can't quite get over that one.
and the creatively deceptive world of AI deepfakes. We've then explored the vital understanding of how and why disinformation spreads, and even why we might be tempted to share it ourselves.
The core lesson here, really, is the absolute importance of critical thinking and information literacy in our increasingly complex world. Knowledge isn't just about absorbing facts anymore.
It's more than that.
It's fundamentally about discerning them. Understanding the context, questioning what you're presented with, knowing how to check things out for yourself.
Which leads us to a final thought for you to consider. In an age where AI can blur the line so effectively, and even a leader's bodily waste becomes a geopolitical secret, what new responsibilities do you have as a consumer and sharer of information to ensure what you believe and what you pass on is genuinely true?